Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. G'day. You know, I was thinking, I would love to take people out for dinner, but right now that is so expensive. I thought I would share with you the small amounts of cooking knowledge I have so that you can have a restaurant quality meal with your date and not break your bank. To get started here, we're just going to wash our Brussels sprouts. You might think to yourself, now Connor, no one likes Brussels sprouts, and normally you'd be right. Though in this instance, I think you'll find that they're quite lovely. We're also going to take out our asparagus and give it a quick little wash as well, just to make sure that we get any grub and grime. If you notice that you see any asparagus pieces that, don't have any head, chuck them out. We don't need them. Now, continuing along with our prep, we're going to continue with some garlic. This one I prepared a bit earlier, but what we're going to do is we're going to cut the ends of the cloves and we're going to then crush them with a large knife. After you've taken your ends off, you might want to get rid of the rest of the skin in there as well. Now, that skin isn't going to be very nice for anyone, including the pan, yourself, or the date. You don't want any of that caught in your teeth or any weird bits of garnish. Now, you might ask yourself, Connor, now why on earth would I be feeding a date garlic if we're on a date? Now, my friend, this is where breath mints can come in handy. Now, if you're at all like me, then you would really like some fresh meat from your butcher. And the point of this meal is that we really wanted it to be nice and cheap and cost effective. So these pieces of meat cost me about $20 for the both of them. Now, thinking about it, you could probably pay about double for these if you were to go out to the city and pay for them at a restaurant. Now, unfortunately, I am a little bit ditzy and I forgot to buy pepper for this, so we'll have to do without. Luckily for this dish, we have plenty to make up for with our rosemary, garlic in the pan, so I'm sure that'll be fantastic. Now, as you can see here, I've totally prepared some bit of salt on the side extra. We're gonna sprinkle it onto our steaks just enough and make sure that we get a nice even distribution. Now, after we've gone through and washed our board, we probably want to get our asparagus and just cut those big white tips off. In my opinion, they're just totally not necessary and you can just do without. Make the dish a little bit more pretty in my opinion too. Continuing on, we're just going to get our Brussels sprouts and chop them in half. Get them prepared because we're going to go chuck them in a steamer and they're going to come out absolutely delicious. And now for a very important part, we're going to start steaming our Brussels sprouts. Now, a lot of people opt in to boil them, but in this circumstance, I believe it is totally imperative that we, lost one. It's imperative that we steam them rather than boil them to give that much wanted veggie flavour. And now we begin by moving on to our main event. So to start, we're just going to melt some butter in here. You can also opt in to use oil, although just for that nice feel of the steak, I truly recommend that you go through with a nice stick of butter. We're also going to chuck in our now crushed garlic cloves. That will make a beautiful taste for our steak. And on top of that, if we chuck in some rosemary, it'll give that special, unique, homey feel that I think that these kind of steaks can have. Now, once that's been cooking for a hot minute, we're going to grab our steaks, fresh that we've just salted earlier, chuck them straight in the pan. Now, myself, I only like these rare, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to cook them medium rare. A lot of people don't like all that blood, and if you don't like the blood, the trick is just let it cook for a bit longer. And now, since we're clearly on a date, it's time to show off with a bit of flambé. Grab a bit of whiskey and give it a bit of a light. Don't worry about the amount of fire there, it will always peter out. It will never last that long unless you have some kind of oil problem nearby. After we've gone ahead and removed our lovely steaks from the pan, we're going to go ahead and add in the brand new half Brussels sprouts. Now we're going to let these cook in here just for a little bit, soak up some of the flavour and change into that nice dark colour that we love so much. Of course, we'd add a bit more butter, that way we get our nice flavour through, and a bit of salt on top, just to keep the flavour running. And from here, we're just going to add in our remaining sprigs of asparagus. Just like the Brussels sprouts, we'll let them cook in there just until they're tender and maybe even a little bit wilted. That flavour will transfer from that steak that we cooked, as well as the garlic and the rosemary and the butter in the pan, and they'll come out and be a lovely, almost like a garnish, I suppose. After our asparagus has been cooked, we're going to just decorate it and make it look a little bit, well, presentable. We'll serve it all up on a plate, and hopefully our guest of the evening will be, well, fed, entertained, and impressed. Thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope to see you again in the future.